Welcome into Other People's Shoes. It is season finale day of What Happened When, and I am so excited to share today's episode with you. I do have to let you know today's episode is of a mature nature. We are going to be talking about very mature things, so listener discretion is advised. But I will say, if you are an older listener at heart, this is an episode you really need to take to heart, because I believe my guests today are going to share their story of what happened when, and we all need to be more on guard on how to protect our kids. So without further ado, here we go.
Hey, come take a walk with me, not like you used to do. Do something different and put yourself in other people's shoes. Open up your mind and open up your eyes and change your direction, change your perspective.
Welcome into Other People's Shoes. As you know, I am your host, Neil Matthews. Thank you so much for joining us today from the great metropolis of Grants Pass, Oregon. It is all about the climate here. We, of course, are sitting in the building that I'm pretty fond of. In fact, my next guest is pretty fond of as well. Solid Rock Church. She and her husband are currently pastoring here. My brother-in-law, William, is the pastor here at Solid Rock Church. So if you're in the Grants Pass area or in the Rogue Valley area, come check it out. Every Sunday they are available to you for church services. And my sister, of course, would be available for you as well. I'm sure she'll probably punch me later for saying that. But welcome in my guest, not only my one sister, Brandie, but my other sister, Angel, who you might remember later this past year. She lost everything in a fire that we had here in the valley. And so she is still dealing with that. And if you'd like to know more about how you can maybe help, if you're hearing this, please reach out to us here at the show. And we, of course, would love to get information in your hand about that, because not only is she affected, but so many other people have been affected by these fires that we had this last year. So welcome in my guests today, both my sisters. And really, there's a story behind my sisters. So let me tell that real quick so I can set this table for you. When I was 11 years old, I remember driving in the car with my mom on I-5. We were going to a place called Carlsbad from where we were living in a little community called Oceanside. And inside that Oceanside community, there's a military base called Camp Pendleton. And I remember driving on the freeway with my mom in our minivan. That's right, Dodge Caravan minivan. And we were driving along, and my mom says to me, Brandie and Angel are going to come live with us. And I said, I don't want them to. Why do they need to come live with us? No, I don't want them to. My mom says, well, you have to understand something has happened. And I said, well, what happened? What could have happened? Like, they don't need to live with us. They're fine where they are. And my mom says, no, you see, their dad has sexually abused them, and now they need to come live with us. I got to be honest. This is 1991. I'm 11. I have no idea what sexual abuse is. None whatsoever. Like, I've not been exposed to anything sexually related. And so it was a hard thing for me to understand at 11. And now we're going to fast forward as I welcome in Brandie first.
Hi.
Hello, Brandie. So that's Brandie's voice. And then Angel second.
Hello.
So, ladies, help get me up to speed, because we were talking pre-show about a date, and Brandie, you helped us with that, and so you know the date, but help us with the date. Your what happened when is what?
So I guess everything started probably February 16th was when I went to the school counselor.
And what happened? Can you walk us through that kind of that day, and then what led you to go to the counselor?
Well, actually, technically, I went to the school counselor on the 20th. I took Angel and left on the 16th. My dad had just been diagnosed with diabetes, or at least that's what we had been told. And I felt like things were going to progress from where they had been, because it was a devastating thing for him, and that seemed to bring on devastating events seemed to bring on more drinking, which then seemed to be the catalyst for the abuse to occur. And something about waking up in the morning with a camera set up on a tripod at the end of your bed where it wasn't there the night before tends to freak a girl out.
Now, when you talk about a camera, are you talking about like a photo camera, or are you talking about like a video?
Photo
VHS camera.
Yeah, photo camera.
A photo camera. Okay. All right. So I did my research. 1991, February 16th is a Saturday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you leave on a Saturday. You don't go to report it at school till the 20th, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Which is a Wednesday.
Correct.
What happens between like the 20th? Why not the 18th, which is like a Monday, first day of school, back from the weekend?
Because I wasn't sure that I was really ready to tell anybody.
Okay.
And it wasn't necessarily uncommon for us to go and stay at a friend's house for a day or two, especially since we lived in Portland but went to school in Tigard. So it wasn't uncommon for us to stay, especially at this friend's house, for a couple of days at a time. It wasn't a big thing.
Okay.
Yeah, quite often we would be gone for days at a time, and we'd come back, and excuse me, he would, he'd say, well, where were you guys at? And we'd just respond with, we were out. And he'd be like, okay, that's fine. He would have no idea where we are at half the time.
So that kind of sets the stage for what we're going to talk about today. I just wanted to kind of get that out there now, kind of let that sit in the air, right? So let's go back to my very favorite question of all time, which is this. Ladies, what style of shoe do you like to wear?
Well, I prefer.
So Angel's going first.
I'm good. Yeah, Angel.
All right.
So I prefer flip-flops, but my ultimate favorite tennis shoes, if you call them tennis shoes, are like the old school Adidas with the black stripes on them.
Run DMC. I'm
Yep.
all of a sudden thinking of my Adidas from
Exactly.
Run DMC. So, okay.
Yep.
So I am like Angel as well, that I prefer to wear my flip-flops, and I wear them basically until there's either too much rain or snow, depending on where we've lived at the time. But if I have to wear shoes that actually cover my entire foot, then I prefer like slip-on shoes like Tom's or what's the other brand? Bob's.
Tom's and Bob's.
Yeah, in fact, the
I
shoes.
didn't even know that was a shoe company.
Yeah,
so.
the shoes.
I've heard of Tom's actually, but
Yeah.
not Bob's.
The shoes I have on right now are Bob's, and they have little kitties on them.
I do see that. I'm wearing my baby blue Adidas with my yellow accent, lemon yellow accent, as I like to say. So, okay. So back to this. So you go to the school, you tell.
Right.
What happens next?
Well, I'm sitting in the counselor's office and I'm telling her what has happened. So she leaves and goes and gets somebody to get Angel out of class. So they bring Angel out of class and sit her down in the office, the counselor's office, and have me tell her what I had just shared with the counselor. So I walk through everything with her, and the counselor then proceeds to ask her if she had any of the same experiences. And she said no, she didn't. And so they had called. I didn't know at that time that they had already called the police. And so we were in there for a short time, and then the police showed up, and they took us to, we had to wait for the Portland police to come, not the police from Tigard, because all of the abuse occurred while we lived in Portland. So everything had to be done through Multnomah County stuff. And so we had to be put, so we're at the school, right? And by the time the police show up, it's like lunchtime. So we're being escorted out of the building by the police officers and being put in the back of a police car, because that's, how they had to transport us. And
Super fun.
it was, super awesome.
Did you see friends along the way?
Oh, yeah. We
Yeah.
had people asking
yeah.
us, what's wrong? What happened?
All kinds of stories made
What-
up, all kinds of stuff.
What do you,
Yeah.
Did you hear any of them? Like any of the stories?
I just saw people staring at us. I
Yeah.
didn't really hear anybody. I was kind of in a zone, kind of in a fog almost, I think. But I just saw people staring at us. That was my biggest thing
Yeah.
that I saw.
Yeah,
What do you
'cause
think the craziest story somebody probably came up with?
I have no idea. I had a lot of friends with the school we went to. I don't know if it's still the same way as it was then, but back then it was 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. So as a freshman, instead of being at the bottom of the rung, you were actually at the top of the rung, which was, pretty cool. And so I had a lot of people that I knew and a lot of people I was friends with. And so I just had a lot of people asking me, what's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? Where are you going? What's happened? I never really heard, because I guess I would have been what you would consider a popular kid.
Mm-hmm.
So I never really heard any negative or anything crazy. We actually didn't get to go back to that school for quite a while. We ended up I ended up at Grant High School for a short time until I requested to go back to Fowler Junior High in Tigard. So,
Wow.
And see, my recollection.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, what do you remember, Angel? Yeah.
So I remember, I mean, we, we'd always lived in hotels and motels, and I don't even think hotels was high class enough. I think it was always motels, the places with the doors on the outside and super, super sketchy. But I remember, I remember when I turned 13, I was thinking, things are going to be different. I'm 13 now. Things are going to change. Everything's going to be different. And of course it wasn't. Waking up with your dad next to you laying naked, spooning you is not really quite something that you want to wake up to when you're that young, when you're 12, 13 years old. But I remember we were staying at this one hotel, and it was, Brandie's like, okay, enough's enough. Like, are you ready? Let's do this tomorrow morning. Are you ready to go? Like, yeah, sure, let's do it. Why not? Let's go. And so we packed, I don't even know, a couple articles of clothing, I think.
Yeah, we had one suitcase and a big black garbage bag.
Yeah, I remember the garbage bag.
And then it was anything you want to be able to have and take with you needs to go in one of these two pieces of things.
And then we, because we always knew that he'd stop off at the stop before where we were staying at to get beer or whatever it was he was getting. And then, so we walked up to the next stop, and was the very first run of the day. And so we knew that he would get off at the stop before us, so we'd walk up the one. And then, we stayed at our friend's house, which we did often. And then it was, it's kind of, shocking and surprising, I guess. Very, very weird feeling to be pulled out of class and walk in and see your sister sitting there with police officers and in tears, crying. And I'm like, whoa, what just happened?
So, Angel, to be clear, you don't ever remember a time of him touching you in a sexual fashion?
So not at that point in time. The more I talk about it and discuss it, actually in a small groups, I guess it was a couple of years ago, I was in small groups, and we were kind of telling our story and things like that. And memories have come back, and, little tidbits, and it's like, oh, dang. Okay. That makes sense. Just little things that, just kind of fall into place, things that I don't really want to think about or don't really want to remember, but those little like tidbits of moments that just kind of pop out, and you're like, oh yeah, that's right. Mm-hmm.
Do you have a specific moment that pops out?
Mostly around the time when, when I would wake up with him next to me and he'd be spooning me, fondling me, those kinds of things. That's pretty much, those are the most memories that come back to mind is those memories when he's laying next to me.
Now, some are going to ask, so we're going to just get it out of the way too. Where's your mom? Now, I know that, but for those listening, they may not. So where's your mom during this period of time? Do we know? Do you guys know?
Well, during this time frame, we didn't know. We know where she is now, and
I was going to say we know where she is now.
Yeah.
She is alive.
Yeah.
She's living.
Yeah, and we have a relationship with her now. But at the time, we were told, actually from the time we were 3 and 4 years old, always told that she didn't want us. She didn't want anything to do with us, that she left us so that she could go and be with other men, and that was her preference instead of being a mom. And, we didn't know because we didn't have any memories of her because we were 3 and 4 years old.
And again, it's not like she left you any memories like, hey, here's a letter of you can read in a future tense,
Right.
of my story or where I was.
Even if she had, we wouldn't have,
we would have never seen it.
We would have never seen it.
Yeah. So we were always told, she didn't want anything to do with us and that she was gone. And so we had no clue. And we moved around so much when we were a kid. The first memory I have is when we moved, I would have been about 4. We moved to Las Vegas. And I remember being in a bus depot and waiting with our stuff while my dad went and got our tickets. And I remember being in there and just being scared because there was a lot of people and a lot going on, and I didn't have any idea where we were.
Did he leave you alone?
Yeah.
While he went to go do whatever he was doing at the bus depot?
Yeah.
So help us with ages. You don't have to give your ages all together, but how, age-wise, how far apart are you guys?
A year and 10 months.
Okay. So
10 months?
10 days. 10 days. A year and 10 days.
You're in 10 days.
Yeah, a year and 10 days. Yeah.
okay, so they're a year and 10 days apart. So we're just going to leave it at that. I mean, we don't need to talk about Brandie's the older. We'll just leave it. Sorry. You are older.
I am the oldest.
I'm
Yeah.
just not trying to be mean. Don't pinch me later.
Shoot, I'm proud of my 43 years of life. Thank you very much. I have worked hard for those 43 years.
Hey.
So I'm just saying when you give an age.
Oh, sorry.
So,
I just totally
She just totally
blasted
blew
you on
my
your
age.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So when you give your age, it helps in context to where Angel is. So that's why I was saying that.
Yeah, so I would have been 4. Angel would have been 3.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, no, he left us like with our bags that we were taking to Vegas. He left us to guard the bags. So a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old to guard bags in a busy bus station.
Probably a hub, I would imagine, because if you're trying to get from Vegas, you got to get to kind of a hub place in order to get to Vegas, I would imagine.
Yeah. I remember it just being really big, really loud, and just super scary because I didn't know what was going on. And then I have lots of memories. I know sometimes people will say, well, you reach stages where your brain locks away some of those memories, so to make room for new memories. So a lot of people don't remember their memories from when they were little. I remember a lot of stuff from when I was little. Not always pleasant, but a lot.
Do you have a memory that was pleasant? But so this is for both of you. Do you guys have memories that were pleasant, and then one that was probably the hardest?
I think probably the most pleasant memories of when I was a kid was being out at Aunt Marcia and Uncle Les's house, because it was like that was the one place that I felt loved, and we had food. Aunt Marcia taught us how to bake, and we went up in the acres with Uncle Les, and he built us a tire pool and a tire swing right over the top of Poison Oak, and it was just such great childhood memories. That is by far my favorite, or my most memorable. My favorite childhood memories is being out there. Gosh, as far as the worst, I don't know. There's some pretty awful memories from childhood. I have blocked off a lot of my memories from childhood. There's a lot of pieces that I don't remember. And I've been told by multiple people that my brain doesn't want to deal with that. There's too many other things going on. So, yeah, I don't even know that I can pick a worst one.
That's okay. That's all right. How about Brandie? What about you?
So I would agree with Angel on the happy memories of being at our Aunt Marcia and Uncle Les's house. We would spend our summers there. We would spend our Christmas breaks there, spring breaks, anytime we weren't in school. And we did that clear up until we moved to Portland. So around the time I was 10. But we did learn how to bake. We learned what not to put in blackberry pie.
And what you should put in blackberry
And
pie.
what you should put in blackberry pie. And, but we learned how to walk through a garden and how to know when fruits and vegetables were ready to be picked. We did have that wonderful tire swing over the poison oak patch. So neither one of us is allergic to poison oak. So that's a good thing. That's good to know, especially living in the Pacific Northwest. As far as a bad memory that like really sticks out, when we moved to Portland, we lived in this 2-story duplex. And it was the first place we lived. And it was a horrible place.
Awful.
Horrible. It was one of the only places that was an actual apartment and not a motel. We lived about our duplex was the first actual dwelling on the block. And we were about half a block off of what used to be called Union Avenue. That's now Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. And so our job in the neighborhood, for all the other kids, there was a storage place across the street from our duplex. If the parking lot was empty, that meant all the kids could come out and play. If we didn't get out early enough, then the prostitutes would bring their johns down into the parking lot and turn tricks in the parking lot, which meant we couldn't be outside. So our job was to check outside our window, make sure that there was nobody over there so we could get out, and then we would run down the street and get all of the kids. And if we were all outside playing, they didn't bring their johns into the parking lot. So we did that for a long time. We lived there for probably maybe a couple of years at most.
Side note, the place was so awesome that whenever you would turn on the lights in the kitchen, the entire floor would move because it was covered in cockroaches. Side note, it was a super awesome place right there.
Yeah.
I'm not even processing that right now. I don't even know what to say that.
So I have a thing about bugs.
Yeah.
I think I know why.
yeah, can't do it.
Yeah.
We would have, sometimes we would be taking our bath with our clothes in the bathtub. So we washed the clothes in the bathtub and then hung them to dry. So sometimes our bathtub included cleaning our clothes while we were in there. One night my dad he would leave us. So I'm 10, 11, Angel's 9, 10 time frame. I remember one night my dad had gone and was working graveyard shifts. So we were by ourselves. Now this is, let's see, I would have been 10. So we're talking like 1985 time frame. By ourselves, half a block up from Union Avenue at night. And we hear the duplex, the way it was set up was you came in the door, you came up a flight and a half of stairs, but it was all part of the top part of the duplex that we lived in. And so the door was down at the bottom of the stairs and there was no other outer door once you got upstairs. So we could hear a rattling of the door handle. It's like, okay, well, that's really weird because it's, the middle of the night and, it's late at night and it just shouldn't be happening. So we go down really, really quietly down the stairs because we don't know who's down there and we're by ourselves. And we get down there and then all of a sudden we can look through the peephole and see that there's some guy. We don't know who it is, no idea. And all of a sudden he starts banging and beating on the door. We're able to get the deadbolt in place because it wasn't in place before. Then we both run up the stairs. We get underneath our bed, and that's where we slept for the rest of the night, was underneath our bed in the dark.
Scary stuff.
Yeah.
So to help the dynamic too, with your mom not in the picture, you kind of became Angel's mom.
Yeah.
Right, Angel?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's fair to say.
Yeah, she kind of, not kind of, she did. She was the protector. She was the provider. She was, everything. I mean, that's, unfortunately when we, it was shortly before we finally left, we had to, in order to get food and stuff, we had to go to the grocery store and we had to shoplift. That was the only way we were able to get, our lady products, our food, any of that kind of stuff. And, she took the lead because she was she was like my mom in a sense. That was her role because she was trying to take care and protect me. And so that's what we did.
Yeah. So I want to go back to that date again, if we can. So Brandie, what you said you woke up, you saw the camera, foot of the bed, and you're like, okay, enough's enough.
Mm-hmm.
How long had the abuse been going on at that point, to your memory?
The abuse started shortly after we moved to Portland. So shortly after I would turn 10. And it just continued from the time I turned 10 until after I was 15. So I'd have been like 15 and a half when I just said enough is enough.
So I know this is going to maybe push some buttons, but is there anything you feel like you did to warrant that abuse?
No, I don't think I ever felt that. I remember sometimes because when my dad was gone in the evenings and gone at night due to working a graveyard shift, I would lay in bed and wonder why was this happening? Like why, not what did I do to cause this, but why was this happening? I remember being probably 13 or 14 and being at a youth group with a friend of mine had gotten me to go to church with her. And I remember standing in the parking lot and asking God, why?
Yeah. I'm not asking you to maybe give us grave detail, but do you remember the first time, and do you remember what you felt like afterwards?
I remember being very confused as to what was going on because I had been asleep, and so it always happened after he had been drinking, and it always started while we were sleeping. I think on some level in his mind, he thought we weren't aware because we were sleeping, which I don't know exactly how someone could sleep through that, but, that was, I would say, the mindset. I just remember being very confused and not knowing what was happening and what was going on.
I've talked to previous people. Well, let me restate that. We talked to a gentleman in our first season who was sexually abused by another male. And he said, and he was very young, probably about your age, and he said on some level he felt like what was happening was not wrong. For whatever reason, he convinced himself, or the person who was not a family member, was actually a guy that he went to church with, somebody he had trusted and built a relationship with. So not a father figure, but kind of a father figure. But he mentioned that he, on some level, thought it wasn't wrong what was being done to him. He didn't think it was wrong. Did you, on any level, think this isn't right? What he's doing to me is wrong?
No, I always thought it was wrong. Probably because he wasn't the first one that had abused me. So I think the reason I can remember some things from when I was really little is because when we moved to Vegas, we had a babysitter where I remember there were lots of kids there, and during nap time, certain kids were allowed to stay up from nap time. So those who were allowed to stay up from nap time were the ones that the babysitter abused during that time frame. The reward, as you will, for allowing that to happen and not crying was you could have ice cream. You didn't have to take a nap, and you could have ice cream. And it alternated between kids. There was I would say there was probably, 6 of us kids at the place all at one time, and it would rotate. There was a couple of us each time.
Was the babysitter a guy or a girl?
A guy.
Okay, it was a guy. Okay.
Yeah, it was a guy. And it was like way out in the middle of nowhere. I remember thinking it was really weird that.
So some random dude that your dad drops you off with,
Right.
is babysitting 6-8 kids.
Right.
Nobody, and this is like 90s, right? Or 80s.
80s,
mid
yeah.
80s.
Yeah.
And nobody has an issue with it.
Yeah, because I would have been like 5.
So he was the first one.
Yeah.
This babysitter is the first one that sexually abuses you.
Yeah.
So you kind of already, did you think that was wrong at the time? Like what he was doing was wrong?
I remember thinking that this isn't how this is supposed to go. That it wasn't right. I remember crying because it hurt. But I just remember thinking that, okay, this is not worth ice cream. I mean, really.
I know that sounds kind of funny, but I know what you mean there.
Yeah.
This is not worth ice cream.
Yeah. As a 5-year-old, I remember thinking this is not worth ice cream. And then when we were older, we still lived in Vegas. So I would have been, I don't know, at this time I would have been 7, maybe 8. And we were at a different babysitter's house. And
Is this a guy again?
no, this is the babysitter this time was a woman, and she had a kid of her own. And I remember thinking it was funny because he would mouth off to her and she would force him to eat cayenne pepper on a spoon. And I remember thinking
that sounds familiar.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but that sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Shout out to Miss Denise.
Yeah.
Right.
I remember thinking that was funny because I never mouthed off, so I didn't have to eat the cayenne pepper. So that was funny. But there was a priest that would come over, and he would pray with all of us kids. Well, I remember one night him coming in to pray with me, and that was not all he was looking for at that time.
And how old are you at this point?
7 or 8.
Okay.
And then a couple of years later was when we moved to Portland. And then after we got settled in Portland, then that's when the abuse started from my dad.
Wow. So you have a series of
Yeah.
events where somebody has
Yeah.
sexually abused you. Wow.
Yeah.
Angel, do you have any fond memories of your dad?
None that really come to mind. No, yeah, I do actually. We used to go to the Barnum and Bailey Circus.
Mm-hmm.
That was the only thing that really sticks to mind. We had a really good time with my dad with. We would go and we'd have, popcorn and cotton candy. But every year that was one thing that we looked forward to doing. And I don't know if he ended up getting free tickets or how that ended up working out. But yeah, that's pretty much the only fond memory I have.
Brandie, same question. What about you? You have
No,
any-
it's the same thing.
Same one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just checking. I saw
Yeah.
you nodding, I assumed, but
Yeah.
just want to make
Yeah,
sure.
to the point where when here a couple years ago, the Greatest Showman came out, that was just awesome.
Mm-hmm.
It's good. That's a good movie. That's the one movie Elizabeth has seen she actually went to the movie theater, I think, like 6 times and watched it, which for my wife to watch a movie multiple times doesn't happen. It's
Mhm.
unheard
Mhm.
of. So
Yeah, it was awesome.
it's a good movie.
Yeah, I saw it in the movie theater 4 times.
Yeah.
Nice.
So
It's
yeah,
good times.
Yeah.
So your dad ends up getting arrested, right? You guys end up going from foster care in Portland to then Oceanside, California. Do you guys remember that day that they came to you and said, hey, you're going to, you're not going to Philadelphia. You're not going out to LA to stay with your auntie and uncle in Bel Air. But you're going to Oceanside, California. What can you walk me through that date for you guys, or that time period?
Well, I remember when we were done. So when we were done at the police station and talking to the police, we went into what's called emergency foster care.
Mm-hmm.
And we were there for a couple of days while they were trying to find a suitable, safe placement for us. And I remember being there and for the first time feeling safe.
Yeah, absolutely.
What made you feel safe there?
There were other girls there that had been in the same type of situations. It was a husband and wife household. They were older, probably 50s, which now...
At the time, that seemed like really old.
Yeah. At 15...
For all of us being in our 40s. Yeah.
Yeah. At 15... 50s seemed old.
Yeah.
However, 50 does not seem quite as old as it used to seem.
No,
it doesn't.
No.
Yeah.
But my thing was that nobody knew where we were at.
Yeah.
Like nobody knew where we were at. And that's what made me feel safe.
What do you mean nobody knew where you were at?
Like no family members. We had no contact with anybody. It was strictly the Child Protective Services and the people that we were with. And they were the only people. Like, I didn't even think the PD knew where we were at. It was very, it was kept tight where our location was at.
Yeah, it was
almost like you were in like a secret witness protection
like
program.
Protective custody.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what we were.
Yeah. And that's what it was, is they wanted to make sure that we were safe and that nothing could happen to us and nobody could get to us there. And so, I remember just feeling really safe there. Then we went from there to living with a family in Portland.
Wonderful family.
Yeah, a really, really nice
amazing.
family, a husband and wife, and then their little boy. And then they had taken in and adopted, I believe they had adopted him, a teenage boy.
Mm-hmm.
And I have lots of really great memories
Mm-hmm.
there. We had every night or every week we would have a game night. And part of the game night is you had dinner, everybody cleaned up from dinner, you cleaned up, all your stuff. And then we would pick a game as a group. And then we would pick our snacks to have. So there was always popcorn, and then you got to pick your favorite couple of candies. And then we just sat and play games all night long.
So side note, this house that we were in, that is the first time, what was I, 13, almost 14 at that point.
Mm-hmm.
First time I had ever heard of the phrase cuddle. Like I had never heard of cuddle time or any of that kind of stuff before this house, because this woman, she was in her 40s when she finally had her son, and they would have cuddle time every night. And I remember thinking, the world's cuddle time, what is that? But that was the first time that I ever realized that there is like that healthy snuggle time between a child and a parent.
That's important, Angel, because you were, at least if I'm projecting here, so correct me if I'm wrong, but you were kind of brainwashed into the wrong kind of cuddle time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
In an inappropriate cuddle time, not in a healthy cuddle time.
Right.
Yeah. That's a good key.
Yeah. And so we stayed there for until we came to live with you guys. And it was we had rabbit one night. She decided she wanted to make rabbit one night, and I just remember thinking, I'm not eating Thumper. I'm just not eating Thumper.
I was just going to say that. How could you eat Thumper?
Yeah.
Well, and the funny thing is that for the most part, she was very vegetarian. So we would have black bean burgers and and veggie burgers, which I can no.
Still to this day.
No. But they so they would flip houses. So the house that they were in, they were constantly fixing and stuff like that. So we would help with things around the house and help with that, and we'd get an allowance. So every Friday when we got our allowance, the husband would take us all to 7-Eleven, and we'd get our hot dogs or our hamburgers or all of our candy stuff and, all the stuff that mom, didn't want us having in the house. And then we'd go back to the house and be like, what? We're fine. We're good.
So why did you leave there if it was so good?
Because the idea was that the state wanted to place us with family. That was always a temporary spot. They only took in kids temporarily.
We were the first girls that they took in.
Yeah.
Yeah. They only took in boys before us.
Wow. So you get in this really amazing house where you get an allowance. There's cuddle time, right? You get an allowance for doing stuff. You get to go to 7-Eleven. And then you come down to Oceanside, California, where you meet Gunny. You meet my mom.
Technically, we didn't meet Gunny right away because
right,
he was on float.
Because he had just left for a float. So
my dad was on a 6-month float when the girls came to live with us. So do you remember that plane ride from Portland to LA?
I don't.
And
I remember getting off the plane, but I don't remember the plane ride.
Well, I'm just trying to think, like, what's going through your guys' mind? Because I know what's going through my mind. Like, and full disclosure, and they know this, but I absolutely hated you guys.
Yeah.
I absolutely hated you guys because, one, I had to give up my room, which little did I know that's the series of events for the rest of my life that would happen to me, that I would always have to give up my room or defer to the girls. Yes, poor Neil. Yeah, let's get a minute to get in my shoes for a second. But I'm just wondering, because I never, and part of the reason why I wanted to do this episode with you guys is to share with you, I never had a true empathy for what you guys had walked through. I never had a true experience for what had taken place. Because, again, I'm 11. I have no idea what sexual abuse is. I have no idea what even neglect is, because as you're alluding to, we haven't really officially said it, but there was a lot of neglect going on. I mean, if you guys are talking about stealing bread, shoplifting bread, and shoplifting, feminine products, which I'm proud of myself for saying feminine correctly. So high five to that. But that's a tough word, by the way. But there's a lot of neglect going on.
Well, and part of the neglect thing is the only other apartment that we actually lived in. My dad worked graveyards, and so we still went to school in Tigard. And this is going to date me just a tad bit, but back when free lunches were these little raffle ticket looking things.
Yeah, I remember those.
Certain colors were free lunch, certain colors were reduced lunch. Well, we always clearly qualified for free lunches.
And different colors for breakfast too.
Yeah, and so
which you probably filled out the paperwork to be able to get.
Right, yeah.
So that's important to say too.
Yeah. No, I've been filling out school paperwork for a long, long time, which amazes my kids. I can fill it out so fast. It's like, dude, I've been filling it out for a long time. But so what we would do is, I never allowed Angel to do this because it was important that she had breakfast and lunch at school.
Again, the mom piece comes in.
Yeah, so I would.
That's an important piece. It really is. I appreciate you saying that.
So I would take mine, and every other day I would alternate. So like one day I would eat the breakfast, but I would sell the lunch ticket to a friend of mine who was already going to be paying for her lunch. So then I would take the money for that ticket, which wasn't very much at that time, but it was just enough to then in the evenings, we lived a couple blocks away from a 7-Eleven. And so we ended up making kind of friends, I guess you could say, with a couple of the people who worked the night shift at 7-Eleven. So we would go up to 7-Eleven, and we found out, because they had told us that what we could do is for 25 cents a piece, we could buy a coffee cup. We didn't have to put coffee in it, but we could buy the cup. They had to charge us 25 cents for the cup. The chili and cheese that goes on the nachos and the hot dogs and all of that was free. So there was no charge for that. So we could take this 25-cent cup and fill it with chili and cheese and pickles. You can't forget the pickles.
Can't forget the pickles.
And then that would be our dinner.
Made it fancy.
Yeah, the pickles made it fancy. Which is, I know, sounds really weird and probably sounds disgusting.
Sounds terrible, actually. I'm sorry. I'm going to jump in on that. That sounds terrible.
Yeah.
But you know what? Still to this day, I still love that chili and cheese with some pickles.
I know.
Now all of a sudden, maybe I want to go try that, but it still sounds terrible. But you say all that because that's how you made it through life.
Right. So that's how we were able to eat. There was a time frame where my dad thought it was a good idea to homeschool us, which basically meant we just didn't go to school for a year. So I really should have graduated a year earlier than I did, but because we missed an entire year of school, I was set back a year.
Well, in time frame wise, compared to what mom and the family said is that year that he took us out was the year that they finally figured out where we were at, and so he took us out of school in order to keep us from being found by my mom and the family.
That's what your mom has shared with you years later. Okay.
Well, yeah. And my mom and the whole family, they all, I mean, I know this is kind of a sidetrack, but all of the every story that we've heard from my mom and her side of the family have all been consistent, and they've all been correlating.
That your mom was always trying to find you guys.
Yeah.
But part of the reason why you guys kept moving in your mom's mind is your dad was hiding you from her.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's important to remember.
Because we moved a lot. I mean, even when we lived in Vegas, we never went to the same school more than a year. And some years we went to multiple schools within that school year.
Yeah.
Because we moved so much. It wasn't until we moved to California. Well, even then we only went to school again 1 year in California.
Yeah.
But until we lived with you guys, there was not a time frame where we lived in one place more than a school year.
Yeah. Mm-mm.
So let's talk about that. Moving with us. First impressions of California, Camp Pendleton, living with... We have a brother. Well, I have an actual brother. His name's Corey. So, again, just to be clear, Brandie and Angel are technically my cousins, but I call them my sister, and here's the story behind that. When I was in 5th grade, like I said, 11... my mom was telling me they were coming to live with us. I didn't want my friends asking questions on why are your cousins living with you. So I started to say, my sisters are coming to live with me. Now, this is still like, early 90s. Divorce is not as prominent as it is today. Nobody batted an eye when I said sisters. I don't know why. In hindsight, I really don't. But so first impressions of California when you get off, maybe not get off the plane, but when you get landed and kind of get settled into the Marine base life and that.
My first impression was, one, it was beautiful. I think maybe that's where my love of the ocean came from. Because that was really my first experience with the ocean. And I felt uncomfortable because I felt like, part of me felt like I was, imposing on people. But the other part of me was, almost relieved because I felt like I was safe. I was in a safe environment, a safe place. I was on a military base. Like how much safer could you get?
Yeah, you got Marines at the gate, MPs, which by the way are a military police if you don't know what that is, which I don't know how you don't, but anyway, you got MPs at the gate. You had to show an ID or a sticker they'd see. So there was some security.
Mm-hmm.
I would think that brought security to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but then at the same time, I felt like I was imposing. I was a burden on people. I know that people have said that we weren't a burden, but at the same time, introducing 2 more people into a family of 4. That's a lot of moving and a lot of adjustments for everybody.
It was a lot of moving, just for the record. It was a lot of moving. A lot of stuff was given up. You were a burden.
I was a burden.
I'm
I
just
know.
saying, if people have told you weren't, they're lying to you.
Okay.
I'm totally kidding.
Well, good to know.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I remember, and I remember being the one that everybody hated in the family because
This is true. Mm-hmm.
Because I felt like I was such a burden and I felt like I was so much to take on that I was like, okay, I'm going to do everything I can do to make them, not upset that they took me in. I'm going to do what I'm told to do when I'm told to do it. And I'm going to, well, the other kids didn't like that.
Because you were a suck up.
What were you called?
Yeah,
There was a name. Is it okay to say we're in the church, but what were you called?
God knows. I was called a suck up.
That's being polite. But Brandie, what was your first impression? Like once everything gets, not necessarily when you came off the plane, but like getting settled.
So I would agree with Angel. The Southern California beach is substantially different than the Oregon coast abandoned area. Yeah.
I miss it.
It's you can actually get in the ocean in Southern California. You can get into it, in the abandoned area. I wouldn't recommend it unless you're looking for, frostbite or something.
I got it in Gold Beach or
where were we? Still not warm.
This summer I got in it.
It's still not warm.
Still not warm.
It was crazy cold. Adia was like, Dad, it's fine. I'm like, you're crazy.
Yeah. Now I remember loving the beach. I still love the beach. It's still my favorite place to go where I can just kind of reset and kind of recoup my thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
But I also remember that I was 15 and a half and on a Marine base. And
Are you trying to say there was some hotties?
And I was like a size 2. So,
Itty bitty little thing.
you know, so being on a Marine base at 15 and a half, you know, I was loving life. That was pretty awesome. But I did feel safe for the first time. I did struggle with the fact that I went from being the mom and in charge and running things to not being in charge and running things.
There was a new mom in town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it was different too because we had no rules, we had no curfew, we had no nothing. I mean, we had learned a little bit from when we were in foster care and stuff like that. So that kind of came into play, but for the most part, we had been used to just coming and going as we pleased, staying gone as long as we wanted to stay gone, not even being questioned, and just, doing our own thing. So I think going from that environment to full time, like mom, dad, like there's rules, there's curfews, there's
Not only that, but there's 2 other kids there.
yeah,
Right.
And just set a scene for you for a family dynamic. My brother is younger than Angel. So
no, he's
yeah.
oh yeah, he
He's
is.
younger.
Yeah.
He's younger than you. Trust me. I've checked
It's-
with my
it-
sources.
It always
and-
throws me off because we graduated the same year
Right.
because I was behind a year.
Right.
So, but yeah, he's a year behind me.
Yeah. So I say that because Brandie's still the oldest, then Angel, then Corey, then myself. So I went from having really 2 people telling me what to do, my mom and my brother, because my dad's like hardly ever home because he's a Marine, to now 3 people, 4 people telling me what to do. And then when my dad comes home, 5 people telling me what to
Right.
do. It was really annoying and
Yeah.
really sucky. So I say that because, again, Brandie, you were not the favorite. You were not the suck up. You were not. You were in your mind. What were you?
I was pretty set in my ways. I was used to being in charge. I was used to making sure that both Angel and I made it to school, that we always had our work done, that we were clean. We had to take city buses from Portland clear into Tigard to go to school. So I was responsible for making sure that we made the connections we needed to make so that we could be at school on time, that we made the connections we needed to make so we could get home before it got too dark and too weird. I was responsible for when we lived in one motel, the door didn't actually latch.
Yeah.
And so too strong of a gust of wind, it would blow the door open. So I was responsible for, when we went to bed at night, making sure that there was a chair against the door, wedged against the door, so that we could sleep and not worry about the door coming open.
Yeah. And then remember Dad brought home this big, huge, like 5-gallon bucket of like syrup for the soda machines. So you have the syrup, the sugary part of the soda, and then you have the bubbles or whatever. But then we had this great big huge 5-gallon bucket that we ended up putting in front of the door, so that way it would keep it closed.
And then a week after we moved out of that place, there was somebody murdered in that same room.
That's not scary or anything.
Yeah,
No.
yeah.
No, it's fine.
So
That was cool.
I went from being the one who set the rules and the one who was in charge of everything, keeping us alive, keeping us going, keeping us doing, to being told what I could and couldn't do, which really just, if you know me, really just doesn't, still to this day, doesn't sit well with me. I don't like people to tell me what I can and can't do. Yeah.
I have a hard time believing that.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's like a family
Crazy.
secret revealed. Boom, boom.
Right. Right. Yeah. Cause I'm so meek and yeah. Anyway, but it was really difficult because, I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to follow a new set of rules. I felt like I had done just fine taking care of myself and Angel. We were still alive. We were still safe. We were still fed. Although it was a weird way to go about it, it was still one of those things. We made friends with a lady at Subway, and she would, we would go up, we would pay for a drink, and she would make us a free sandwich at night. In fact, her and her girlfriend took us in one night, and
Girlfriend, like girlfriend?
yeah, like girlfriend, yeah,
Okay.
girlfriend, yeah.
Okay.
Um,
All right.
And they were, and I wish I remember names. I remember faces and I remember people, but
Yeah.
names just totally.
Well, it's probably at this point, it's probably better. If you don't remember names, just, you don't want to name drop some.
I mean, no, but there were so many people that stepped into our lives in those times that were kind of like a fresh breath of air. And, I don't know, I guess shouldn't name drop, but maybe Rhapsody. Her and her family were absolutely amazing people. Christians, we would go to church with them. We would go and help clean the church with them. And, her dad would, they'd have a little studio set up in their bedroom and we'd listen to them. And, it was just, that was like I don't know.
Camp. The first time we ever went to church camp was with them through their church. And we loved church camp.
Yeah.
Church camp was amazing. In fact, one year I decided I wasn't going to come home after church camp. I was going to stay and be a counselor the following week. So I just didn't go home, which for the camp wasn't a big deal because there were a lot of kids that were doing that from the youth camp. But then I had to figure out how to get, because it was in the middle of nowhere. It's over on the Oregon coast. And I can't remember. I can't right now. Like no. I know where it's at, but I can't right now think of where it was. But come to find out, it's only like 20 minutes from where one of my uncles on my mom's side lives. So we would go and spend our summers there and only be 20 minutes from other family.
Yeah. From potentially people that were looking for you.
Yeah.
That's important too.
Yeah.
So I want to go back to California again, but kind of fast forward a little bit. So you guys are there a while, and then what people don't know is your dad can't be found. He's on the run. They don't know where he is.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
He got arrested or somehow got out of jail.
His boss, but he was arrested and his boss posted bail.
So he gets out on bail and he flees. He's gone. And and I remember as a kid them looking for him. Mm-hmm. And I remember, at the time America's Most Wanted is going on. You guys remember that show, I'm sure. And those that don't, go Google that. John Walsh?
Walsh.
John Walsh. Mm-hmm. Thank you. I knew one of you guys would remember that. But I remember watching that show and I thought, is Uncle Mark gonna be on America's Most Wanted? Like, that's where my mindset went as a kid, right? But I remember they end up finding him in, of all places, Battleground, Washington, near Canada. Mm-hmm. And why he didn't go to Canada, who knows? But anyway, so he gets found again. He gets put back in jail, and then a trial starts, and you have to go. I remember you guys going back and forth from California to Portland because you have to go testify. Well, so can you talk about testifying at the trial?
Yeah. So by the time we actually had to testify, we actually were living in Medford. Mm-hmm. So we had. So
I didn't even remember that.
Yeah. So they had found him.
Where my memory was.
They had found him. They started the trial process while we were still in California. Mm-hmm. But knowing that your dad was retiring and we were moving to Southern Oregon, they were able to move the date so that it wasn't trying to make that drive from Southern California all the way to Portland.
Got it. See, I didn't know those details. That's awesome.
Yeah. So when we testified, it was the beginning of my junior year in high school. I mean, I think maybe we were only a month and a half into school.
And so now you're at a new school.
So now we're at a new school.
Mm-hmm. New school in Oregon.
Another one.
Yeah,
another one, which we all three graduated from. High five.
Right. Yeah.
Go Panthers.
Yeah.
4 of us. Well, Corey graduated too, I think. Anyway.
He had a little help.
Yeah. Another little side note. But tell me about the trial and tell me about, because this is the first time you've really faced your dad
since we left.
You left.
Yeah.
Which now fast forward, how long has that time frame been since the time you told till you're actually seeing him in court testifying?
So that would have been
a year and a half.
Longer, because you're talking February of 91 when we left, and then you're talking October.
Because I was in 8th grade in 91 in Oceanside, and so it would have been 92.
No, the paperwork for when we left was 91.
Yeah, it was 91.
Yeah, I just looked at the police report.
The joys of a police report. So some time has passed. We don't need to.
Yeah. So it's been a couple. It's been a couple of years. Yeah. So
which is the point.
Yeah.
A lot has transpired in your guys' life in a very short period of time.
Yeah. So you're talking.
Yeah.
You're talking like my freshman February of my freshman year to October of my junior year.
I mean, that's like 2 years almost.
Yeah.
Okay. So you see him in court. Do you remember walking in, seeing him there? Do you remember what you were feeling, what you were experienced?
I remember being scared at first and then being really ticked because when we first get in there and we're talking, we're talking to the prosecutor's the one asking the questions to start with. And I remember I had this little bear, which I still have, which the funny part about that is it's a bear that a boyfriend gave me when we lived in Portland.
Nice.
Yeah. So I still have that bear to this day, actually. And my kids are not allowed to play with it. But I remember having it with me when I went to testify. And
on the stand.
On the stand,
Okay.
yeah.
All
Yeah.
right.
So I remember how it's still in one piece, I don't know, because I think I really just wrung the bear's neck out of nerves, just moving the parts. And I remember being scared as I was testifying and talking with the prosecutor. And then when it was time for his attorney to ask me questions, his attorney stood at the table where my dad was at, which then forced me to have to look at my dad. Whereas the prosecutor had stood.
Do you think that was intentional?
I do, yeah.
Absolutely.
I do. I think it was a tactic to try to see if they could throw us off. Because he did the same thing with Angel.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, so did you testify as well? Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll get to Angel in just a second, but
And so then that just made me mad because I knew he was doing it on purpose. And so it was one of those things where it was like, okay, so the point you're trying to make here is am I still willing to make the statement and
under oath
in
in a legal proceeding, which is scary, right? I mean,
Right.
it's a scary thing. I would imagine.
right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. While having to look him in the eye. And that just made me mad, which then made me more determined to answer all of the questions and be as steady as I could be, because it was ridiculous because he had admitted to everything in the beginning and then changed his mind and denied it.
Recanted and denied it. Okay.
Yeah.
So Angel, what do you remember about testifying?
So I remember getting called up there and I mean, so many questions being thrown at you, but I remember, I remember seeing him and I'm thinking, God, he got fat.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a pretty skinny
Yeah,
guy.
'cause
I mean, he's probably what, 5'11", roughly.
I
I mean, I don't know.
even
He might
think
be
that
like
tall.
5'8", 5'10". I don't know.
He's kind of shorter stature, I think.
Yeah, maybe 5'6",
Yeah.
5'7".
But yeah, he was always super skinny because he was always drinking and he was always strung out on some kind of drugs. I mean, I remember finding, a baggie of white, what now we know is cocaine, but or crack, something white baggie underneath the bedside.
And it was not flour or sugar.
It was not flour and sugar,
Right.
and it was not baking soda. But he was always strung out on something. So when we, were living with him, he was always super, super skinny. And so I remember seeing him in court thinking, wow, man, what goes to show you what happens to your bodies when you stop, doing drugs all the time.
Don't do drugs, not even once.
No, don't do drugs.
So,
But yeah,
yeah.
no, they would ask us all kinds of, they asked all kinds of questions. How was your life? Mine, because at that point in time, I didn't, mine was basically about the neglect. What kind of foods did you eat? Well, we lived off hot dogs and spaghetti. Sometimes when we were lucky, we would, go to the store and steal food to eat because he'd be too drunk or high or whatever, passed out, and we would have to fend for ourselves and, those kinds of things. Well, what did you do for clothing? Well, I don't even remember what we did with clothing. And, cleaning the house. Our idea of cleaning the dishes was running hot water over the dishes till the food fell off. And then, bam, your dishes are clean. Times that we would have our bathtub full of dishes because we had nowhere else to wash them. So we'd fill the bathtub full of water and put all the dishes in there. And then they would sit there for weeks on end because we didn't want to bend over the tub to clean the dishes. Things like that. I don't even remember having food in the fridge, those kinds of things. And so when they're asking, and he did, his lawyer stood right next to him, didn't move from the table. So we were forced to stare at him while we gave our testimonies. And I remember when we were both done, they removed him from the court and we were sitting in benches in the back of the court. And he tried to walk in the bench directly in front of us. and tried to stare us down. And the bailiff like shoved him in one farther away from us.
So I'll help just for time's sake. Fast forward, he gets convicted.
Mm-hmm.
How long does he serve jail time?
Not long enough.
No, it
Well,
was
clearly not long enough. So just so everyone knows, he's getting charged not only for the sexual abuse, but also for the neglect as well, right?
yeah. So by the time everything went to trial, it was really hard to prove to the jury the neglect because we had already lived in a healthy, safe environment for almost 2 years. So there was no other than our testimony, there was no sign of the neglect.
Because I was a very large young girl. Like I was very heavy set. I was very.
So they're thinking you're not really neglected. I mean, look at
right.
you. You're not like anorexic looking.
Right. You know,
Right.
and he, you know, I mean, he would bring home, to this day, I still can't eat cruller donuts because he would bring home, he worked at donut shops. And so he would bring home cruller donuts and he would put his coffee cup in the bag. So the cruller donuts would be, and I don't know why I drink coffee to this day, but so they would be soaked in coffee. And so that's, yeah.
That sounds nasty.
It was very gross.
Yes, so
That's
gross.
why
Yeah.
this,
Still
to this
sounds
day.
nasty.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
yeah, so I was a very large girl when I was growing up, and Brandie was very lucky to have a very slim figure. But we didn't, by any means, come trial time, looked like we were neglected.
So the neglect was hard to stick.
Yeah,
as
so
far
they-
as, like,
yeah.
charges.
Yeah,
but-
so they didn't charge him with the neglect. They did charge him with 7 counts of child abuse. There was more than that, but 7 was where we could lock down locations. And so that was what they went with. So he served I think it was 4 years.
Yeah.
I just remember hearing the sentencing and thinking, are you kidding me?
Well, yeah, because the year after I graduated, I moved to Eugene, and we had to get a restraining order against him because he had gotten released from jail. And so we had a restraining against him when I lived when I moved to Eugene, Oregon. And that was right after graduation.
Yeah, because we were sure he was going to try to come and find us.
Yeah.
So full disclosure for my listening audience, I actually reached out to their dad about doing this, and he did turn me down. So if you're wondering, well, what's his side of the story? What would he say? He has been given an opportunity to share his side and has chosen not to. So just so everyone knows. But I'm wondering about this idea of not long enough, and if you could talk to him, what would you say to him right now? If he was in the room with us right now, what would you say to him?
So
They're both looking at each other like, who's going to go first? So Angel's going to go first.
So, in total transparency, I have actually spoken to him since. He was not really. I mean, it wasn't really thought and planned out to do it. It just ended up happening. I had gotten a phone call from my aunt Neil's mom that he was in the hospital, and they wouldn't give out any information to anybody except for direct relatives. So I did reach out and I tried calling to find out exactly, what was going on, what happened. The nurse wasn't exactly thrilled talking to me. She put me on hold and said, well, I have to check with him and see. And I'm thinking, oh, crap. I didn't really want him to know I was calling, but okay, great. Here we go. And so she told me that, he'd had what I don't remember exactly what else, some heart issues and breathing issues and stuff. But she said, he wants to talk to you personally to tell you exactly what else happened. And I'm thinking, fantastic. Not quite the word I used, but we're censoring.
Yeah, we're
censoring.
in a church. But at this point in time, you had no interaction
None.
with him.
No.
And let's put a time frame on that.
Years. Because the last time that I had really had anything to do with him was during the trials. And that was 90.
Well, it would have been right after you graduated. So you graduated in 97, right? No, 96.
No.
96.
So I graduated in 96, but we still didn't have any in contact
Right.
with him. So it was.
You haven't had contact with him probably since right around 1990, 91?
Yeah, right around
Yeah.
that time frame.
Okay.
The
Yeah.
last contact I had with him was when we testified in court. That was the last.
Yeah, that
Okay.
was it. But and we just had a a conversation, and it kind of, touched on that. And I said, you can't erase what happened. I said, but here's the thing, I mean, do I forgive you for what transpired? Yes, I do, because I'm not going to allow you to take up residency in my heart with hate, because it does nothing to you. It doesn't affect you. It just affects me. And I refuse to allow that to have impact on my life anymore.
You shared that with him?
I did.
How did he receive that?
He just said, okay, I'm not quite sure what it is that you're talking about that you're forgiving me for.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. And Brandie, what would you say to him if you had an opportunity to talk to him right now? Well, let's go back to Angel. You never really answered that. So what would you say to him right now if you had an opportunity, if he was in this room with us?
Own the truth. Own the truth. We know what happened.
Make it about you. Sorry. Not
Make it-
about you too, but make it about you. Make it personal.
Make it personal. I would say, just, I don't know. Be honest. Why? And I don't even necessarily need to know why anymore. It's just, I don't know. I mean, yeah, I'd like to know the why, but is it really going to matter at this point in time in life? Probably not.
Would you want to tell him anything?
I think I pretty much did. I mean, when I did talk to him that time, I said,
With the health issues?
yeah, like,
Okay.
I forgive you for what's happened, but I'm not going to allow you to do that. I'm not going to allow you to take up residency in my heart.
But you do forgive him.
I do forgive him.
Okay.
I mean, I obviously will never forget, but I do forgive him. I mean, I honestly feel like, like I said, if you don't forgive people, it does nothing to them. It just affects you. It's your inner peace. You're allowing them to take up that piece of your heart and your mind, and it doesn't affect them at all. It affects you.
All right, Brandie.
So I'm kind of like Angel in the fact that I'm not exactly sure what I would say to him. I have also forgiven him for what he's done, because I just, like Angel said, it's not damaging him for me to hold on to it and to hold a grudge and to just, constantly hold it in. The forgiving him for what he did is for my own mindset and for my own health and well-being. I feel like since that happened, it's probably been, probably 25, close to 30 years since I truly forgave him. That it's allowed me to be able to live. I'm happily married. I have 4 kids, who I love and am probably very overprotective of in multiple aspects. But I don't know that I have no desire to seek him out. I was asked one time if he passed away, would I go to his funeral? Well, I would go to his funeral. I mean, no matter what happened, he's still my dad.
Mm-hmm.
I've forgiven, but I haven't forgotten. I wouldn't necessarily trust him to be around my daughters, ever.
That's an important thing too. Brandie and Angel both have daughters. Angel has 1, Brandie has 3. And that's important to remember. Did you think having daughters made you more, and after everything that you walked through, made you more aware of where your daughter was, what happened with your daughter, who interacted with your daughter? Do you think any of that had an impact on how you raised them?
I think so.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know. With my daughter and I, it's kind of, and I know it's probably not the healthiest. And I know a lot of Karens out there are like, what are you doing? But I think that I do see, because it has been my daughter and I for most of her life, that I do see her more of, I do kind of have more of a friendship with her than a mom role a lot of the time, and a lot of people don't. But it's always been just the two of us. But I'm very careful with where she's at and who she's with, and I don't allow her to go to friends' house unless I've met the parents. And that's kind of, how I've always been. And a lot of people these days aren't like that. They're like, oh yeah, sure, go over to Susie's house and, have fun and have a great time. Let me know how things go. But I'm like, no, I need to know where she lives. I need to know her mom's number. I need to know if mom and dad are going to be home. If dad's going to be home, I need to meet dad because if I get any kind of creepy vibes, it's not happening. And that's another part, is that one thing that I don't know, that I guess it's hard since with everything that's happened in life, one thing that still stands with me and still sticks with me, and I wish I could get past it, is that it's really, really hard for me to see a father and a daughter, just the two of them alone, going and doing things, because in the back of my mind, I always think, is there something different going on? Is there something going on with that? And I guess that's one thing that I hate about my mind track these days, is that that's one thing that I can't get past. And I know it's not fair, because you should have a father-daughter relationship. And maybe because I never had that, maybe that's why, but because of our how we grew up, I just cannot look at a mother or a father and a daughter in a pure way most of the time.
Do you think your dad stole that from you?
I do. Yeah. And I think that I've been able to, we've been able to move past a lot of things in life, and we've been able to overcome a lot of things in life. But I think that's still one thing that is just always, because that's what I grew up knowing. That's how I grew up seeing life. That's how I grew up seeing father and daughter relationships. And so that's something for me that's hard to try and not make my mind go there every time I see that.
Brandie, what about you?
I think like when my oldest daughter, who's now 22, right after she was first born, it was really hard for me to see other people interact with her, because males specifically, okay. Yeah. Because I didn't have a positive male role model growing up, it was hard. It took me until she was probably 5. By then we'd had our second child, our son, and it was until she was 5 before I could see her with other males, whether it be men from the church or men in our family, with her, and not be concerned. Not that I thought, as the men that they were, that's something they were capable of, but because that was the only experience I had, it was always kind of in the back of my mind. My husband has been aware of that, so he's always been really had been really conscious of that for me, because he knew that was a thing for me. So, but now I look at it, and I don't still have that same mindset, and haven't had for many years, because I have been able to, through my husband's family, been able to see positive father-daughter interactions, have my own positive father-daughter interactions, because my father-in-law is more like a dad to me than I ever had growing up.
Last question, then we'll play our fun little game of senseless. So here we go. Last question. What is one thing that you've learned through this situation of, growing up and in the abuse and the neglect? What's one thing you learned about yourself through that process?
Honestly, I think would probably be, I'm a lot stronger than I ever thought I could be. I think that's probably, and I know the way that I've lived my life, a lot of people said that's, classic signs for an abused child. I haven't always lived the straight and narrow, been divorced twice, the whole 9 yards. But I've had to be strong, and I've had to pull myself through, and I've had to fight a lot of my life for a lot of different reasons and a lot of different things.
That's a great lesson, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Brandie.
So I learned that I didn't want to be the stereotype. I didn't want to be that. I didn't want people to look at me and say, "Oh, your behavior is this way because you were abused. Clearly, that's why you are the way you are." I wanted to, for myself and for my kids, I wanted to break those molds. I wanted to break that chain of abuse and neglect, and so I fought for a long time to get away from that, and I feel like by being able to do that, I have been able to help other young girls. My oldest daughter asked me one time, "Mom, how come all of the girls from camps and stuff are drawn to you?" And I'm not really what you would call a youth leader, because teenagers make me crazy. Even my own sometimes, but teenagers as a group, they make me crazy because they just don't have a clue. And
That's true.
yeah,
I have one. They don't have a clue.
Yeah. And, but my thing has always been with the kids is, I will do anything for a kid. One of my bonus kids, she lived with us for almost a year, and, she had a not so great, young childhood as well. And, but I tell them all the same. You can call me mom. You can come and stay at our house, but be aware that I'm going to treat you the same way I treat my own kids. So if I have these rules for my kids, these are your rules. If I have these expectations for my kids, this is the same thing for you. And I've been asked before, well, how do you get the kids to like you? I'm like, I have no idea. Don't like other people's kids. I just, I know that's really horrible to say, but
She really does love kids, I promise.
I do. I love my own kids, and I have, even as my kids have gotten older and become adults themselves, they still have, Emily's in the National Guard, and even as recently as a couple weeks ago, a couple of the guys in her unit have started calling me mom. A couple of the ladies in her unit have started calling me mom. I mean, they're all adults. I mean, these are young men and women that are old enough to serve our country and fight for all of that. But I'm mom, so like I don't even know how many bonus children I have now. But
that's probably just a great testimony of being a mom to Angel all those years.
Mm-hmm. It's in your blood.
What would you say to your sister about the situation, and then what would you say to your sister? So vice versa, and then we'll play our game. I promise.
About the situation,
just,
like growing up
just
together?
about growing up. Is there anything you want to say to her about growing up, and is there anything you want to say to her about growing up? This is your moment.
Maybe I haven't like said it out loud or said it straight, but I thank God for you. I mean, I think that honestly, if it hadn't been for you, I don't know that we would have been where we're at. Like, that's just reality. I may have fought you the whole way and called you not very nice names. And, we've had our moments and we've had our times. But, you still try and mommy every once in a while now. And we butt heads every once in a while. But, I don't always, maybe giving you a couple ulcers and, in our in our adult life, because I think that's a role that, it's just not easy to give up. But, yeah, had you not done what you've done in the past and with growing up and all that stuff, who knows where we would have been.
What would you want to say to Angel?
I was a pain in the butt.
Don't bail her out here.
Sorry.
Let her think.
Well, you kind of were a pain in the butt, but I think that was like a lot of the times, like the day-to-day stuff, making sure that we were always together. and always safe. I think that's part of who I am. And no, I wasn't always kind to you when it came to, you didn't have to agree so fast. Because I didn't always think it was fair that I had to take you everywhere.
Yeah.
But I couldn't leave you either because that wasn't going to be safe for you. And so the idea of you not being safe still to this day kills me.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you say to her? Tell her right now. This is your moment.
You need to be safe.
I try.
Why is that so important for you for her to be safe?
Because I don't feel like I always kept you safe.
You did the best you could. More safe than I would have been if you weren't there.
I felt like I should have done it better.
Yeah, but you were just a kid yourself. I mean, look, here I am, basically living with you. Never mind the fact that my house burned down. It's all good.
Yeah.
Guys, thanks for doing this. Brandie, I know that was some tough stuff. Angel, that was some tough stuff to walk through. I appreciate you guys letting me into your heart and letting me into your story and letting me behind the scenes of what you guys were walking through. And my not that it's about me right now, because it's not, but my statement to both of you would be, I'm sorry, because I was a JERK to both of you on different levels.
Well, I feel like I got you back a little bit for that one time.
I did punch you once on quote unquote accident.
I slammed you into a wall. That was not on accident.
We have so many stories we could probably go down, and the road we could probably go down, but we don't necessarily have time for all of that. But I want to tell you guys something that's been on my heart for like the last couple of years. And I know you guys know this, but I want to make it a public declaration. You guys should not even be sitting in this room right now with me. You should not be a pastor's wife, Brandie. Not because you're not qualified, none of that, but you really should probably, in my mind, where you guys should be is you should be strung out on drugs somewhere. You should probably be on welfare, living in Northeast Portland, which is a pretty sketchy part of Portland, if I'm not mistaken, right? Help me with that. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, very much so.
You guys should probably be in my mind, hearing everything that happened, should be in some form of prostitution or sex trafficked in some way. You should not be a mom, or maybe you are a mom and you're probably selling drugs, Angel, at least in my mind. Both of you guys should be. There's no way you guys should be sitting in this room, statistically speaking, at least again in my mind. And so for you to be here is a tremendous testimony of your guys' fortitude, and I believe God had a part to play in that. I truly believe that he protected you for something greater, And I just want you to know that I respect you both tremendously. Not because you did the show. It goes beyond that. I love you guys as cousins, but more, I love you as my sisters, and I'm honored to call you my sisters.
Can I say something? So,
please, yeah, and then we'll play our game, I promise.
In all reality, and through everything that we've been through everything that I've personally walked through, without the grace of God, I would not be here. I shouldn't be here. And I've, through the abuse, through the neglect, through the living, pretty dang near close on the streets, through all of my trials and all of my, experimenting with drugs and, promiscuity and, all of that kind of stuff, and 2 marriages and 2 divorces and everything in between. And, I shouldn't. Statistically, I shouldn't be here. I shouldn't be where I'm at. I shouldn't, have the love and support of the people that I do. But yeah, with the grace of God, he's pulled me through all of it. He's, I have my days, I have my moments. I think we all do. But at the end of the day, he's still there and he's got my back, that's got to be the number one. I have to give it all to him. Everything that we go through in life and everything that, you know, that he hands us, it's for a reason. I don't know what. I wish he would show me sometime soon, because that'd be great. But yeah, he's got a plan for everything. You just have to trust him and believe in him.
Do you have anything you want to add?
Well, I know that everything that we went through and everything that we have experienced, not only as kids but as adults, Angel was a little more experimental than I was.
That's a good word to put it.
I never did the.
I'm not going to touch that one.
I never did the drug thing. I tried alcohol, when, you know, like every 21-year-old does, and and neither one of you get to make a comment. I have issues with not being in control, and so being out of control, drunk or on drugs is not my thing. I need to have control, because I didn't for so long in my life. And my husband and I still have that conversation of needing to be in control, and the difference between needing to be in control and needing to know what's going on. And I view them as the same thing, and he doesn't necessarily. But through all of that, and where God has brought us, and brought me, is that, you know, I'm able to provide for young girls. I have one daughter that has a few friends that may not be in sexually abusive environments, but are in emotional and verbal abusive environments. And I'm able to provide them that safe place to be. And for me, that's a huge, huge thing. And if I hadn't experienced what I experienced as a kid growing up, I don't know that I would be in the same spot to want to, and to be able to be aware of something just not being quite right with another kid, and having them come and know that that they can be in a safe place.
That's great that you're able to provide that based on your experience. So, guys, thanks again. So here's our game, Senseless. Yay, Senseless. So, Brandie, we're going to let you go first, because you get to do everything first. So you rolled a 4, as you can clearly see, because we're face-to-face, sitting around a round table. So you got a number 4, which is this question. What is your favorite sound or noise? Or, sorry, what is the sound or noise that you love to hear?
The sound I love to hear.
Or noise.
Or noise. I'm not really a noise person. Noises kind of irritate me. But probably my favorite sound is to hear kids laughing, to hear babies laughing, to hear the teenage girls at my house laughing. I love that sound. My son has this full body, full belly laugh, and he's had it since he was a little kid. And it just, every time I hear it, it just makes me smile. And our now 3-year-old, almost 4-year-old, she has the same style of laugh. It's this full body belly laugh that is just so amazing to hear.
That's great. All right, Angel, here you go.
I was going to hope I could have the same question.
Nope. I re-roll because you get your own question. Oh, you'll love this one, though. Number 3. What is the greatest thing you have ever smelled?
Greatest thing I've ever smelled. The ocean.
I was going to say, I bet it's the ocean. That was going to be my guess.
Just I just love the ocean. I mean, sometimes it's not always the greatest smell, because sometimes it kind of sounds kind of funky, but no, I just love the salt, the sea salt, the smell of the ocean, the freshness.
Yeah, agreed. Guys, thanks so much. Appreciate it. One more time. Thank you. Thank you both. Thank your husband on my behalf. I'll thank him too when we get out of here, but I'm thanking him now publicly too, guys. Again, Solid Rock Church, if you're in the Grants Pass, Rogue Valley area, great place to come worship, and a great place to hear my brother-in-law, Brandie's husband, who, by the way, Little side note on William. I'm going to tell on him a little bit. So we'll save this for when he listens to it to prove that he listened to it, because we'll have this part in here. William actually gave me my first North Carolina hat.
True.
And may have even started me a little bit on the trajectory to like North Carolina, because he was wearing a North Carolina hat when he first came into your life. And I thought, And then I started watching college basketball, fell in love with them. And I'm wearing, you can't smell it on me maybe, but I'm wearing Aspen cologne because you dated a guy named Dave who wore Aspen cologne as a kid. And I remember smelling him thinking, man, I want to smell like that, because Angel was just enamored with this guy. We could tell another cologne story that Brandie led me astray on, but that's for another time and another place. But guys, again, thank you so much. And I want to close with just this thought as we wrap up our season of what happened when. Guys, I want to call your attention to the fact that you don't know the scars that somebody has. There may be some outside scars that you could easily see, sure, but sometimes there's some inward scars that have been there for a long time. So I want to ask you and challenge you this next week is get with somebody in your life. Find out if they have some outside scars. And if they have some inside scars, find out if they have both. And if they do, will you sit around a table like we did today? And will you have a conversation with them? It may not be a very joyful conversation. But I think in the end, when you listen to that person and you really hear their side of it and really hear what happened, I think you're going to get a new perspective. And with that, guys, I just want to remind you of this. Remember, when you walk in other people's shoes, you really do get a different perspective on life. Thank you so much for joining us this season. Stay tuned till next week. We start our new season. So excited about that. You'll hear more about that in the days to come. But guys, again, stay tuned till next week when we walk in other people's shoes. Thank you so much for joining me on Other People's Shoes today. As you know, I'm your host, Neil Matthews. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. And really, thank you for joining me this last season. September till now, we have finally made it. We being you and I, you the listener, me as the host, we have finally made it to our season finale. And what a season finale that was. To end the season with my sister cousins. Man, what a great way to end it. I know they have a heart-wrenching story, but to hear the fact that they've been able to forgive their dad for all that he has done, to me was very impactful. So let me know what your impactful moment was this season, whether it be this episode or our past episode. I would love to hear from you on that. So if you can, send me a voicemail straight from my website, opspodcast.com, through my connections page. You can send me an email straight from there. If you send me an email with your feedback, I'm going to send you out a free gift just because you're awesome for doing that. So if you'd like to take part in that, please, of course, do those two methods. Speaking of new things, I am excited about next season. That's right. Next season is going to be here next week. New month, new year, new president, maybe? Who knows? I'm ready to say goodbye to 2020. Anyone else's hand up? Hopefully I'm not the only one. But will you join me next month, next year, next season, as we begin our How Do You See Me season? If I were to meet you on a plane, what would I see in you? What attributes would I immediately recognize about you? Whether it be your hair color, what you do for a living, but I'm going to be talking about how you see me. So join me next season as I start season 7 of Other People's Shoes. So hopefully you can make time to be a part of that. That, of course, will take place on Wednesday at opspodcast.com. That, of course, is a great place to connect with me through the website, through social media, whichever you want to do. There are great ways to stay connected with what I'm doing here at the show. Speaking of that, if you would like to be a guest on a future episode of Other People's Shoes, please go to my website, opspodcast.com, click on that Be My Guest, and I will get some information in your hand how you can be a future guest on Other People's Shoes. With all that said, thank you again for giving me the last 3 months of this season. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. Stay tuned till next week. Remember this. When you walk in other people's shoes, you really do get a different perspective on life. Again, thank you so much for listening, and stay tuned till next week when we walk in other people's shoes.